Committee of the Whole meeting to order. Please be aware if you're attending this meeting, our meetings are recorded for future viewing. We're privileged to gather on the traditional territory of the Kwakwala. I can't even read tonight. I'd like a motion to accept or amend the agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, passed. So no petitions and delegations. So the first thing is to adopt the minutes from the February 1st Committee of the Whole. Is there any questions or concerns, or can I have a motion to accept? Pass. So moved.
Seconded.
Oh, did you second it? Okay, sorry. All those in
Yes, I
favor?
did. Sorry.
Thank you. Old business is the report to council economic development manager work plan. So you have the work plan in front of you. It's your pleasure, council. Dev manager with us tonight. Councillor Downey.
I did express at our last meeting my concern that there was no mention of housing.
Councillor Downey, your mic's not on. I can't hear you.
You have to push your button on.
Hear me now? I think it was on.
Oh.
Yeah, it was on.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to say that we are missing housing in this document. So,
And the new document has housing in it.
It says housing remains as my #1 priority.
Oh, did I
Bottom
miss
line on the
something?
first page.
Because the document that is in this package is, I'm going to say, updated from the original document we received, which really was more of a draft
correct.
to meet the ICE-T funding guidelines as opposed to the actual working document. Would that be correct? So this one, I thought it was highlighted in green or something.
I may have missed it. then.
Through the mayor, if I could answer that. Yes, the original document was the response to the request for funding. ICE-T wanted to see a work plan, and they had specific items that they asked to see in that plan, and that was what I gave them. I didn't even consider at the time that I don't know, it was my own fault. I didn't mention housing because it wasn't in any of their requirements when it came to the funding. So I have started a new work plan and included housing and expanded on some of the challenges as well as some of the opportunities of attracting investors and developing housing in Port McNeill.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Mitchell?
See it in there now.
Perfect. No. I did have one question, because everybody, it seems on the North Island got funding for one and got these positions. Is there any thought around coordinating with the EDMs from the other areas?
Through the mayor, yes, there is. I've been speaking to a number of the other EDMs. I'm meeting Friday with the economic development officer from Port Hardy. She's coming to our office and we're going to have a meeting. And I've spoken to, I want to get his name right, Riley at Community Futures. And he actually wants to bring all the EDMs together into one room to talk about the issues that are forefront for each one of us. If we have good housing, it's going to impact Port Alice, it's going to impact Alert Bay, it's going to impact Port Hardy and vice versa, because there's such a high demand now for housing that individuals are looking everywhere, just as I did when I had accepted this position. I looked in Port Alice, I looked at Port Hardy, and I thought, if I'm going to work in Port McNeill, I should really be living in Port McNeill, and I was very fortunate to secure something.
Thank you, Chair. Since you're meeting all the other economic development people. And I think I'm really skipping ahead, but one of our strategic priorities is development cost charges, and that relates directly to housing and development. So I guess this is, we're talking about strategic priorities later, but we have that CFO and council sort of slated for that. I wonder if that's an opportunity for initial discussion or a gateway into if Port Hardy, the surrounding communities, if we all have the same development cost charges, then that takes away the pressure of the race to the bottom or not having them at all. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Through the mayor, I really have not investigated that too deeply. At this point, what I'm more focused on is what land is available, what improvements may need to be made, and what sort of plan a potential investor is able to present to council. I want to make sure if someone is coming in and saying, we're going to build X number of homes or so many garden suites, I want them to have a plan that addresses and tries to predict what kind of questions will be asked. So in terms of development costs, I haven't really gone down that road yet, and I apologize for that.
If I may, fair enough, but I guess I'm mentioning that more for my council. Like if we're identifying that as a strategic priority to have those cost charges, then we don't want to put the cart before the horse and invite developers when we're not ready. And, part of our original strategic priority was to approach the other communities. And if we all have them, then perhaps we don't lose out on development opportunities. But personally, I feel Port McNeill sort of stand on its own with regards to that.
Councillor
Councillor
Mitchell?
We're not making motions at this stage of the meeting, are we? No. So
Recommendations.
I just want to concur that we have already identified that development cost charges are something we want to take care of.
Yeah.
We identified it a year ago or
Yep.
more, and I don't think it's really the
Well,
economic development are she's going
the,
to work with what we put on the table. And
I
we already
think,
decided we were going to do that. So.
if I'm not mistaken, because we didn't have a development permit process that was coming as part of the zoning bylaw, and Kevin had said he was going to give us some structure of suggestion of where those things would be in line with our policy for what we were going to ask for from a development permit point of view. But I agree with Councillor Cole. If these people are all getting together, it's a good thing to have on the burner as opposed to not talk about it and then miss an opportunity. Sorry, Mayor Wickstrom, I keep forgetting to look up there to see if you're waving your hand or anything, so I apologize.
I guess just in closing, I wanted to make the economic development person aware of that might, and then I also have the other belief we need to do a little more infrastructure studies before sort of plowing ahead with the next big development. So just wanted to put that out there.
Okay, so if there's no other comments or questions.
Sorry, I'm working off my other copy and not this one, but one question I did have is that I noticed that there was quite a few meetings that were to be established and I just wondered if it was the intention of the executive director, development officer to form these committees or to join some of these committees that are currently already established and operating.
Thank you. Through the mayor, I have joined several committees at this point, the VINTAS committee, the Vancouver Island Economic Developers Association. I'm working with Community Futures. There's Vancouver Island Coastal Development Association. They have a number of new ones. And I'm working working towards communicating with the Chamber of Commerce what their plans are going forward. I've met with the tourism committee head And he said when his commission meets, they're going to invite me to come meet the gang, as he said, which I'm really looking forward to. I have not met with the Harbor Commission yet, but I have been consulting with the harbor manager about some projects that I could possibly assist with and find some funding for. So I can't think of who else I have seen, but I've been keeping fairly busy that way.
So is it in your intention to strike new committees? Because there are a number of here under the deliverables, it says committee formed. So that's why it's a bit ambiguous. It sounds like it's a deliverable, something that you would be bringing forward, but I just wanted to
Yes,
get
and I
clarity.
had when I did that, that was to meet the requirements of the ICE-T funding application, the work plan that they wanted. Some committees, for example, I didn't form a recreation committee because I'm not sure if there is a recreation committee. I haven't discovered that yet. If there isn't, I guess what I could do is try and call a meeting and see who's interested in spearheading that. I'm trying to think of what other committees were mentioned in that work plan. I just met with the farmers market and the food network group at noon today, and I will be meeting with farmers market people tomorrow morning on telephone.
Yeah.
So that's another committee that we're working for, food sustainability for the North Island, which is quite involved. The other one, I'm trying to think of any other committees here.
Well, there's the recreation one that you mentioned, enhanced maintenance and development of community trail system. That says committee formed, establish and oversee a committee to explore and develop business opportunities in the committee, particularly in the association, the harbor development linked to downtown improvement.
Right.
Committee formed.
Yeah.
And then, the support activities of youth that further achievement of goals of 2015 ACTEV strategy. And then again, that's another advisory committee. And so those are some of them.
Yeah, I need to, thank you. And I think it behooves me to go back through this and find out who I have not approached so far. I have not been involved with any youth committees at this point. I have talked to the Vancouver Island Trail Association, and I have spoken with some avid hikers as well as Councillor Cole about the trails. Some of them need improvement. Some of them are within the town limits. Some of them are in the regional district. So I met with Greg Fletcher on some of those and Pat English.
Yeah. So I guess how do we get a document that actually provides more clarity? Because some of these committees are established. So you're actually working with them, not creating them or directing them. So,
Yes.
But the document doesn't read that way. So how does the public interpret this document in terms to understand the direction that that we would be focusing on?
I am creating a new document, and it will be much more succinct.
Okay.
This one is, I agree, it's a bit vague in parts, but falling on my own sword, I had a week in a new position to create this document because my main concern was getting it in and getting our funding. So I had till December 31st to submit it. So it was kind of a bit of a crazy rush, but I was hoping I had hit most of the items except for the big one of housing. And that, certainly mea culpa, that was my fault, but I've certainly made up for that.
Yeah. Just my last question is we did on February 1st discuss some priorities that council has going forward. Have you received that list in order to maybe see where that can fit into your scope and areas of responsibility?
Yes, I have received that list, and I noticed the first thing on the list is housing, which has, again, it's my priority every week. So I'm talking to people, I'm looking for options, I'm seeing what other communities are doing and hoping to come up with a good example saying, hey, this model works really well. I've talked to a number of seniors in town to see what their ideas are because they have very specific needs that might be quite different than mine or yours. And so that's very valuable as well. When you talk about subdividing your house and renting part of it out, or you talk about building a granny suite. I'm not sure if our zoning allows for that, but I need to delve into that a bit further. But there are a lot of options, and then getting some homes built. standalone homes or smaller homes, garden suites, apartments, townhouses. I've spoken to a number of potential investors about the kind of options and the things that we need here. And they open up quite a few challenges as well, because in the housing study, it said the average rent was $800 a month. And I am certain that this year, the average rent is more like $1,200 a month. And in a new building, it's probably going to be more like $1,600 a month, which is a scary number nowadays. So trying to interpret what the market needs and what the market can support is one of the juggling acts I'm doing right now.
So maybe just for clarity, because when that housing report came out, it was based on the statistics that were, 4 years old at the time.
Yes.
And it's recognized that it will be updated with the new statistics, which I believe are coming out quite quickly here.
Yeah.
And so some of those numbers, that report will get updated, which of
Yeah.
course would impact and reflect much of what you're referring to right now, the changes that
Absolutely.
we've seen.
Yeah.
So,
Councillor Mitchell?
Yeah, I guess when I went through this and I thought there wasn't really anything that was left out. And that's okay in certain ways, but on the other hand, you can only focus on so much. So have you kind of drilled it down to 5 or 6 items that you're going to focus on?
Well,
And-
right.
And maybe put some goals in place for those 5 or 6?
Through the mayor, I'm currently trying to determine, I know housing is my number one priority.
Okay.
I'm looking at other items. I'm going, where do I put them on the list? So I have a list and I'm trying to prioritize that right now. But because I'm relatively new in the position and new to returning back to the island, I have a lot of people that want to talk to me. So I'm kind of going, okay, which is more important, this one or that one? Who do I make time for first? And one of the ways I prioritize is how many people are going to be impacted by this decision. If it's 3 or 4, I'd love to put them higher on the list, but if there's another group that's going to impact 1,000, they step ahead in the line. But right now I've done fairly well juggling all of them. I'd like to make sure they all know I'm approachable and I want to work with them, and I want to see Port McNeill move forward. And and that's what I've been doing.
Do you see it being drilled down to a manageable number?
I think so, yes. I think so. By the end of the month, I think I'll have my top 5. But that doesn't mean I'm going to throw anybody out of the mix.
I get it. No more
Yeah.
pressure.
Oh, it's okay. I can take it.
I was just going to say, when, or what sort of reporting structure should we be expecting?
Well,
from you?
what would your pleasure be through the mayor? What would you like to see? Would you like a report at every council meeting or once a month or?
It's an interesting question, because my initial gut would be once a quarter, but there's only 8 quarters. So that seems a little bit, I don't think every council meeting would be appropriate. But what does council feel like? Should we be getting, once you get this new plan, if you said you thought by the end of the month you would have a bit more finalized plan, then would we expect kind of at the end of every month to get a bit of, this is where the month went, this is, these 5 pots are still on a slow boil, but this 6th one came up, and like I think that's kind of an important piece for us, because I don't want to see you get off too far and then all of a sudden come back to us and we go like, hey, whoa, what's going on here? So I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts. Mayor Wickstrom?
Yeah, well, I think it would be appropriate. Our other staff gives us monthly updates. It would be appropriate for our economic development manager to do the same, I think. And on your point, Deputy Mayor Barron, it would be good so that Marilyn either wouldn't go too far off in a direction that we weren't sure about, or she'd be able to give us the pitch as to why.
Your worship, if I could, I would be very happy once I get my plan outline tightened up a bit and keeping in mind that it's an ongoing process. That plan will change and evolve as the need requires. Once I get the first version of it done, I would appreciate sending it out and getting some feedback from you, or maybe a meeting where you can say, yeah, we love this, we hate that, why are you doing this? This is awesome, we didn't think of that. And it will also reflect what comes out in the OCP. So that's another piece of the puzzle. I've looked at the draft and tried to make sure that I didn't stray way off into the boonies on it.
Is that a recommendation that we need to make then so that it's established that we're expecting something?
If I may, Chair, I said one more question about reporting. Is there regular intervals you report to ICE-T back?
I'm not sure if can you answer that?
I just wonder if the original, I understand the original plan was
Yeah.
rushed or whatever, if that would be a revised one in 6 months or something.
Through the mayor, ICE-T is very happy with the report. So when I talked to her, I said, is there anything you see I need to change? And she goes, no, but if you need help with any of these items, please get a hold of us. And so I've had very positive feedback from them so far.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Downey?
I probably just have one thing to add in terms of reporting. While we may state that we would like a report given monthly, I would also say that because things on the ground do change and will change, that would be, council would be made aware so that we hear it from your office first and not from elsewhere in the community. And so that's a judgment call on your part, because we won't know what we don't know, but you certainly will. And it would be appreciated to hear it from you before we hear it in the coffee shop. So that's just, if you have to slip in an extra report or something, or a quick update, I know I would appreciate it.
Okay, through the mayor, thank you. I appreciate that. If it reassures you at all, I don't get to go to the coffee shop and talk to anybody. All I see is my husband. So, and he doesn't talk to anybody.
So
So,
it's us in the coffee shop that hear it.
yeah.
You'd be surprised.
Well,
Yeah,
I know
home.
if you don't give people news, they will make their own news at
Exactly.
sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's a danger of economic development. I'm not particularly worried about that. And I've been trying to go out and meet with as many businesses as I can to introduce myself, find out what their concerns are, what their plans are. And so I will make sure that council hears it first.
Mayor Rickstrom, did you have a comment there? Or you were just nodding, or?
I was just going to say that it's through the deputy mayor, because I am not there this evening. I keep hearing you say Mayor Marilyn, and it's through the deputy mayor.
Sorry.
Comment?
My
Councillor
apologies.
Lost my train of thought. Yes, it was regarding reporting, and our CAO gives us timely reports via email. So if maybe just tag, and I notice you have referenced, meeting with developers with Marilyn. So that might be just a simple way to include that, any significant developments in there.
Thank you.
So just procedurally, do we need to make a recommendation about the reporting, or are we all good that we will get a written report monthly? How do we?
It
Yeah.
always helps to have something recorded.
Okay. Can I make that recommendation? Madam Chairing?
You looking for a motion?
I'm looking for a recommendation that we can then motion out of the next meeting, yes. Whatever it is.
I'll
we
make
do.
a motion for monthly the reports from the Economic Development Officer.
That.
Any further discussion on that? All those in favor? Thank you.
I do have some questions here. I just, it's my other document, but it's still here. And this may go away with whatever you bring back to us. But there's things such as activities, provide resources to aid the community in recovering from the COVID pandemic. We have a Chamber of Commerce who's been very active in distributing that information. So we have that, that is happening in the community already. And there's a few other little things that are kind of like that through here. They're already operating and yet they're in the plan. Would some of those things, would we see a shift in how this is worded in here?
Yes, you probably will. I know the COVID resources that I can provide are probably things like links on our town Facebook page, which are available through the chamber and a number of other organizations. And I actually questioned that one myself. But yeah, the document that'll give you my plan, it will evolve and that will likely become less. Not that it's a lesser important issue, it's just less important than housing, in my opinion.
My concern is that some of these things are being addressed in the community already. So
Yes,
it wouldn't be to our benefit for you to you know, how your town gets allocated as you know, housing
Yep.
is a priority, seniors are a priority. And so it's that's all.
okay,
If something's already established and operating well, then
yes,
perhaps that's not something that we need our ActDev manager to focus on.
right.
And I don't know how the rest of council feels about
Yeah,
that, but I think that there are some priorities we have.
Yeah, frankly, not everyone's part of the chamber. I operate a couple businesses and I haven't really
I
felt
think that,
lots of outreach there.
yeah.
It's
I
on their
think that the
website.
Economic Development Officer needs to, from my point of view, focus purely on economic development issues. There's a whole bunch of other players in the game that are looking after some of these other things that you can certainly maybe participate in, like as they throw in a link on a Facebook page. But as far as, I think you're gonna have your plate full just on economic development, myself.
Mhm.
And
I
these
agree.
peripheral issues, although they're not unimportant, you simply can't be all things to all people.
No.
And I think we need some real focus on an area that we're weak on and you're not. And we can deal with those peripheral issues using other resources. That's what I see.
Thank you.
And your focus would be, like you say, housing, attracting new businesses, supporting existing businesses like tourism that's already well established.
Mhm.
You know, those are, to me, those were the things that are gonna
Yes.
bring meat to this meal.
CAO, Nelson Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point for council to recognize that the first year of the funding through ICE-T, they have identified COVID recovery as one of their priorities in receiving that funding.
Okay, thanks.
Chair?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, and I think to Councillor Mitchell and Councillor Cole's point, there are different organizations who offer these kinds of help to businesses, and I think just our executive EDM being aware of who offers what services and just directing businesses there, because part of that her role will also be to assist businesses to either expand, grow, or survive. And so directing them in the direction that they need to go to get the information. I was involved with a COVID recovery task force through UBCM, and one of the things that came up is businesses often to do with COVID recovery need to find, they hear it from multiple sources before they finally get the help sometimes. So just wanted to throw that out there. I don't think our manager was looking to reinvent the wheel, but can certainly guide people in the right direction if they need that assistance.
Okay, thank you. I just want to let everybody know it is 6:30 and we do have strategic priorities as well, but if we're feeling comfortable, I mean, Marilyn's here, if we need more time for this, then let's keep going, but are we feeling pretty confident and able to switch into the strategic priorities?
I'm
Thank
fine.
you, Chair. I am, as long as the economic development manager stays, because some of the strategic priority, I think, lends to that.
Oh, I didn't say we were letting her go.
I know, I just want to be clear, she didn't run for the door.
I didn't didn't say we were letting her go. I just, could we switch the topic? But is everybody's good with that?
Yes.
So the next is the strategic priorities report to council. So there is a recommendation from staff to take a look at our list and assign a level of priority and some expected timeframes. And then they gave us the list back, which Connor does have the ability to throw it back up on the screen if we want it. It's in rough, smelly felt behind us, if anybody wants to look. And then we have the typewritten original 2019 priorities. I was trying to maneuver it around in my own brain. And what I did was I looked at it, all of these items, and I overlaid governance and compliance as one filter, risk, liabilities and risks, and I'm using that in a very broad sense. Financial risk, if there's a contract in place for something, that would be a financial risk. I'm not necessarily saying that liability and risk is a bad thing, just so you understand my language. And then human resources was another filter. And then town-owned lands, buildings, anything that would affect our, like our assets, I guess. Again, loose words, just so that I could start to filter. And what I did was I put a 1 into each category. So for me, the Broughton Strait campsite came up as a 4, which to me would be a high priority. The core certification floated up for me as a 4. I had added the museum and the summer staffing because they're usually under 25. So those both percolated up to the top as 4s for me. I don't know how anybody else kind of started to put things into your head, but I was just looking at it. If you looked at this list with those kind of 5 or 4, sorry, I had a 5th one. I had committees, because I do think that's, if those were like the governing priorities, then we've got all these priorities. How do we fit them in? Does that make any sense whatsoever, what I'm saying? And just can that help us try to give, and I'll be honest, Derek, I didn't give any points to active transportation. And that's not to say it's not important.
It's
But
for numbering.
it's my numbering, but I did break the roads and sidewalks out separate from the active transportation, because you did make a comment last time, and in the way it works in my brain, they are 2 different things, which the roads and sidewalks actually got a 3.
I look at it a little bit differently.
Yep.
My first inclination is to go through and remove all the things that are already underway and that we've already agreed to do. We already agreed to do something with development cost charges. We had it on there last year, so we already, that's there. So not saying we shouldn't take it off, but it's already agreed, so it stays on. The campground, I think it needs to have a feasibility study. We know we can lease it year after year so far, and it doesn't make any money. So it's really such a low impact financially that I don't think we can put very much time into it. Then I jumped down to fugitive water control. It's already underway. So I'm not sure why we have to make it a priority, but if we do, we do. But it's underway. It's been underway for a number of years. Public bathrooms, we have a project going on that's going to give us washrooms and showers down at the marina. So we've got those things happening and so on. And then I looked at the bullying, harassment, code of conduct, violence in the workplace. Those 3, I think, could be lumped together.
Yep.
And say, are we meeting our statutory commitments? for those? And if we are, leave them alone. And if we're not, then let's deal with them. We've got a lot of other fish to fry. I don't know where we are with that, but I'm sure we're probably partly compliant on some of them or all of them. And it isn't really going to require a lot of work to bring us into compliance with the law. And so on. So that's the way I prioritize it, that way, as opposed to the way you did it, which is fine. Everybody's got their own method. The town office accessibility, we prioritized that last time, 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago, and it didn't go anywhere. We didn't do anything about it. And now we're back there. So is it a priority? I don't think so. If it was, it would be done by now. So why would we put it on there again? Because we're in flux about that building. So I just crossed that one out. The old school asbestos mitigation is a red herring. It can be dealt with on an as needed basis. We can train our own people and do it ourselves. And it hardly will cost us anything. If we get a contractor in, it'll cost us $1 million to get rid of 50 pounds of asbestos. So there's ways, so I don't see that being a strategic priority. I think that's just a waste of money. An analysis of moving the town office to the old school. I don't know, is it a priority? I don't have an opinion on that. And that and the library probably would go together. We're trying to attract them to team with us and throw some capital into that, or provide long-term tenancy or whatever. And the fishing float for me is number 2, it's right after housing.
You know, at our last meeting, if I may.
Yep.
The idea was thrown out, should we consider moving the town office and the public health clinic to the old school? And I've thought about that a lot since then. And it has a lot of merit. I really, and it meets the needs for the library as well. So we could have library, public health, our town office. We would have accessibility issue goes away if we're relocated.
Yep.
We are sitting on significant funds from the community forest that would allow us to do the renovation on that building, to address the heating, to replace the roof, and to reconfigure, to move walls, to redesign the space in such a way that it is useful and meets the purposes and the needs of those 3 organizations, and or if there's another one that comes to light. So after our last meeting, that one has floated up there, and it's tied with housing for me, because we have a building there which will be vacant soon, and we have to address it. We also have seniors that are wondering, where do they go? You know, we do have, if we vacate our town office, that frees up a building that is accessible to seniors living in the area, and or those who could walk there, get their groceries, walk up the hill, whatever the case may be. But it's more centrally located. So I really those become my 1-2s, and then the other would be policy and core certification. Those and I say that for the same reasons. Councillor Mitchell, you addressed beach slide is underway, fugitive water is underway. A lot of these projects are already being put forward and they're being worked on. So these are the in additions to.
Mayor Wickstrom?
Yeah, I have a little bit of a different opinion on the underway. I think it's really important to still have them on the list because some of them, especially the OCP and the Beach Drive slide, in particular, the Beach Drive slide has some liability issues around it. And I think we've got to make sure that it's on a priority list so that not just our council, but other councils coming after us are aware that this is something that needs to be at the forefront. And the other layer to that is some of these projects which are underway still do require a lot of our public works and so on and so forth. So just being cognizant when we do other strategic priorities, as Councillor Mitchell said, in addition to that, we have the capacity for the in addition to and still have the other projects done at a level that we want to see.
Could agree with that. Councillor Cole, do you want to?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, I looked through this list sort of with a housing lens. So really, to me, the first 4 items all kind of play into each other. Like, I don't think we can really move ahead with housing until we know what's going on with the CD1 development, for example, or we've talked to Mosaic. Who's going to spring a new development on Pioneer Hill without sort of knowing what's going on with that property and the infrastructure, as I mentioned earlier. And are we going to do development cost charges or not? Is that a priority or not? Like, if we're not going to do it, we might as well decide now and get it off the list. Do you think it's worth looking at in conjunction with housing and the future development? And then, I've been Hoy Bay development. I've always thought it'd be great for a park, but if it's not, if there's opportunities there for a significant development, it ties, because it's right next to CD1, it ties into that. With regards to the old school, I've always thought we've sort of needed to make a move there. I'm a little, I don't really want to leave that decision for next council. I think we should probably make the decision. We've been sitting on it a while. I'm really, like, we could do it piecemeal. We could hire a project manager for a couple of years, and then maybe the contracts are under the threshold to be put out to tender. It's one HVAC unit at a time or something. So maybe there's a way to do that and get a little more employment and value of it. But I am concerned, and I'm going to ask a request of staff to look into this with the planning department. If Joe Blow bought that building and wanted to move in classrooms and medical stuff, everything would have to be brought up to code. So can we skirt those requirements, or are they requirements of the BC building code? And I think we need to be real clear on that before we go in. If for that building to work properly, it needs like sprinkler system and all, like, if we can avoid it and we don't have to do it, but then there's also a moral and ethical thing, because that's the way it's called an assembly occupation, just like this gym does not meet code right now, but it's been here and that's fine. So if we're fundamentally really changing that building, then, there's sort of an ethical, whether we have to do it or not. I think it's something we should really look at. So I think there'd be a little bit of homework to do before we jump right into that. And yeah, like, those are my sort of my main 2 things. Move forward with the old school and then sort of those housing questions. I do want to say maybe some of the COVID startup money could be used for restarting that building, right?
Yeah.
So there's another potential funding source.
Yeah.
I was doing some reading this week, and the Supreme Court of BC ruled in favor of the city of White Rock of rezoning a piece of property that had been rezoned by a council previously, and to the detriment of the developer who wanted to put up 12 stories, and they wouldn't let him do it after down the road, right? We've got the CD1 that we changed at the request of Mosaic of Island Timberlands. We made that piece of property the way they wanted as far as the zoning was concerned, and they've done absolutely nothing. So I don't think we're probably in a pretty good position now that that ruling has come down, because we're in control of that zoning. So we need to look at that piece of property. It's been sitting there doing nothing for the last 15 years and figure out what the highest and best use is for it, for us as a community, and zone it the way it's going to serve us the best. And that might encourage them to build something there. Because right now, we're being held hostage by the owners of that land. And they can wait for us to make a move and crush us because they got a way bigger chunk of property than we have to develop. So we need to put the squeeze on them by zoning it to the best interest of our community, which right now, obviously, there's nothing in it for the community, the way that property sits. Absolutely nothing. We're talking about taking a tiny little piece of that property that we own, the 9 acres of Clay Bay, and turning it into housing because they won't do anything. So maybe we need to think about that. Because it looks like the Supreme Court's on our side on this one. We can go back and change that zoning because they haven't done anything. They haven't put in an application to develop it.
So if there's no intention, yeah, we could put it back to A1. Then we're in the driver's seat for development on our land
That's right.
instead of taking a huge risk.
Yep.
So I've often felt that that was an onion.
I'm sorry.
I often feel that that property is an onion. And I personally, I'm listening to what you're saying, and I personally haven't seen enough that I feel like I've peeled the onion, if that makes sense. I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying. It almost seems like it's like a crying onion. So like if I was to look at staff right now and say, can you pull me the file? I might get a funny look. I don't know, because I don't think we've directly said, okay, lay it out for me. Exactly where is it at? What is it? What can they do? Can they pull the pin tomorrow and start building? You know, do they? I don't honestly know. So how do we? Is that something that we're going to say then? We want that clarity, and then like you say, well, we've got the zoning bylaw, we've got the development charges, the stuff coming out that Kevin was telling us about when somebody does a development and we can get them to give us land or give us money or make a park or whatever. Does any of that apply now because the time has gone so far? Do we need our zoning bylaw to come in before we can do that? Can we start doing that now? I'm not even sure there's a relationship really there with Mosaic / Couverton anymore. I mean, we had Dominenko and Pam Jorgensen come here to talk to us, and they were ill prepared. They thought they were coming about the campground. They weren't aware because of the merger. And who is the person now that we talk to? You know, I know there's a couple of people in town that phone the guy, but they've started to make that relationship with him. And I just don't know. I'd actually broken it out on my spreadsheet into Mosaic into 4. And the idea of reestablishing a relationship with them so that you can start kind of have these conversations. Maybe that's our EDM, maybe it's the CAO, maybe it's actually a member of council that starts to do that. I just don't know where to start with that one, but I agree, it's got to be up. I mean, it's really upsetting to me as a mom, where, you know, and an employer of young people in this town, and I got these young kids that all want to go to camp because they can't buy houses in town. It's they can't even buy townhouses or anything. There's no affordability for them, and there's no. But the recommendation from staff was to assign timelines, and in my brain, the policy, the certification, the core certification, those ones I feel like need some timelines to it. The rest of it almost kind of feels like some of it's already ongoing, as you've said. How do we timeline it? Because I mean, I can't say, or we can't say as a council, April 30th, I want the housing all under control. So what is it that staff is actually looking for when you say timelines? Is it just more a bit like I'm saying priorities? I mean, everybody's kind of had their say around the table, and definitely housing's floating up. I think you could say that the policies and certifications was floating up. the town office being relocated to the old school, that's definitely floating up. So is that kind of enough? What is it that, what is it that you're looking for then? Because if you want me to say, hey, I want you to tell me everything by March 30th so that we could move the town office into taking into consideration like what Derek's saying about building code. If it's the same owner, maybe you don't have to put sprinklers in, but you have to have, you know, the exit signs. Like, I just don't know. Anybody help me out here?
Well, let our CEO
Okay.
explain.
Yep.
Maybe.
Thank you, Chair. So I think a good exercise for us to go through, so we've got roughly 30 identified priorities here. Before, my opinion is, before we look at timelines, I think we need to narrow this down to, you know, like a top 10 priorities. And, you know, through that process, if some of the chunks that Councillor Cole brought up, that you brought up, you know, about the policies, if that comes out of it, that comes out of it. The way I've seen strategic planning done in the past is each councillor goes back with the list. You can only use 1 to 10. So looking at the 30, you choose your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Give it back to a staff member, and the one with the lowest score is the highest priority, because that's everybody's number one. And so forth and so on for your top 10. And I think once we have that top 10, then we could sit back down again and go, okay, what is, and you could get some advice from staff. What is a reasonable amount of time to get core certification? Well, talking to Bjorn, probably about 2 years. You know, so, you know, that it's sort of that information that we could, once we have that top 10, as staff, we could sort of focus back on those top 10 and give some, you know, give some advice on what some good timelines might be.
So one question I have, so policy development is something that we've talked a lot about at this council table. And we have since, you know, in this time, we have employed a deputy CAO, and policy development definitely seems to follow within the purview of the CAO deputy position, either or. So for me, I guess I object to having this as a strategic priority. This should be an ongoing and a plan. At the school district, you had your policy binder, and it was just gone through methodically. Once a month, you just, whatever it was, and they just went through it. And so for us, what it would be is staff would be bringing forward a policy where we're lacking, or amending where needed, whichever the case may be. So I kind of hate to throw that on here, because to me, I see that as under the scope and responsibilities of administration. And so, you know, I don't want to give that a rank, put that in my top 10 when that should be an ongoing tactic. And it hasn't happened because we've been short-staffed, but that is no longer the case. And so that's one that it's a priority, but I don't know that it belongs here now that we are fully staffed, I guess is what I am saying to council here.
And my only issue for keeping it on there is that there's a compliance
Right.
issue. And
We don't
so
wanna
if-
lose
if
sight of
we
it.
as the employer need to give direction to staff that we have to be compliant, then I want to give that direction as an employer.
But that makes 8, 11, 12, and 13 one item.
Correct.
So all of a sudden you're down to
Yep.
Mhm.
25.
20, yep. 100%.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. You know, the OCP, if we acknowledge that the OCP and our zoning bylaw are still there, then for me, cost development charges falls under that zoning, and that's going to be captured as part of that. So there are some things that are going to fall into other categories, and they're just a smaller part of a greater priority.
And project reporting, really, isn't that just part of administration? We talked about it at the previous meeting. I don't know that it needs to be a priority item for council. Not sure. I don't think so.
Yeah, should always be a priority.
Yeah, it's just part of it, part of being responsible with administration of projects. You get reports.
Transparency. Yeah.
Can I ask for maybe one suggestion or a motion to initiate within a month, a meeting with council and mosaic regarding CD1? Or like initiate a conversation with them.
I think it would be good.
But, you know, again, I see the first 3, 4 bulletins like all together. Development cost charges, are we gonna do them or not?
Beach Drive slide kind of fits
Is in
in with
there
those
there
as
too,
well,
yeah.
because I would be comfortable doing any development at the end of Beach Drive being a one-way in and out
Not knowing.
street
Yeah.
and not knowing, like, the risk is too high there for it. And that's where I was going with, like, the way my charting was going, because I agree with what Mayor Wickstrom said too. The development cost charges is kind of already underway, in my understanding, under that OCP. And so if it's on there so that it's a trigger for staff, that we wanted to see that and make sure that it is, I mean, Kevin said he was going to give it to us. So it's got to be, once it comes to us, it's got to come to us so that we can decide what we're doing with it.
Kevin may be on that, but it's not part of the OCP. It's not in the OCP and it's not in the zoning. It's a
No,
separate-
it doesn't fit there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we need to ask for it?
Sorry?
Do we need to ask for it?
Well, I thought we had asked for it because we're going to now have a development plan, or I'm not using the right words, I don't think.
It's a subdivision plan when somebody comes forward with CD1, the subdivision plan, correct me if I'm not, and it's up to our CAO to approve those plans. It's nothing to do with us. He was talking about that. And I wasn't too comfortable with that.
So we
but-
have to give the guidance, we have to give the policy to the CAO or his designate so that the decisions are being made in line with what we are wanting.
I'm sure the CAO is gonna let us know there's a subdivision permit, but
But that
It is
goes
his
back,
call.
that goes back to reporting too. Like even the project reporting.
so
So
can we,
again-
can we lump 1 to 5 together and just call that first priority or then do a numbers thing later?
Okay, we're at 6:58. So. The other thing too is if you pull out the things that are in the ongoing pile, you pull those out and leave them as ongoing.
Mhm.
And then you look at what's left over and say, well, we may only have 15 then that are left over. And if we ranked, would that
Mhm.
meet the need that you're asking for, CAO Nelson Smith?
My line of thought, especially at, 6:59 now, would be some direction for staff to take this list and from what I've heard from council today, do exactly what you were talking about, lump policy together, lump development together, and lump already, projects already ongoing
Yeah.
together. Make a more strategic list for council and then, perhaps come back to another committee of the whole meeting prior to our next council meeting. And with all of that information compiled, so it just streamlines. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Streamline a little bit.
Do we need to make a recommendation then that that's what we're asking staff to do?
I'm not sure what that was.
Pardon me?
I'm not sure what that was, what,
Just reorganizing it.
Yeah. And minimizing it. Grouping the items together, identifying what's already underway. Grouping together, like Derek says, at least those top
Done.
3.
So just for clarity, is that for us to do and those 3 categories, do our top picks, or are you asking staff to do that?
I think if all of us did it and then gave it to you, you compile it and give it back to us as a compilation. Does that make sense?
Either way, I'm happy to go
Okay.
either way.
Can we as council commit to getting that to the CAO by a certain date, the end of this week?
Sure.
Can we do that? Yep. So by the end
I'll
of this,
do my best.
you'll do your best. Okay.
Mine might be slightly late, but I will do my best.
we'll give you a day's grace.
Thank you.
You can have the weekend. So everybody groups it. Derek's already got his done, so he gets the gold star. Then we'll give it back to Pete, who will then put it into a summary document to bring it back to us so that we have actually started to streamline. Okay.
So due Friday?
Due Friday. Okay. Or there's lines.
So prioritize this list, basically.
Correct. In your fish float at the top.
So let me ask one thing about that. I'll motion to adjourn this meeting.
Thank
just
you.
So that we can move on, but in our 30-second break here. If that's a budget item, can we not just throw that on the list, put it on RFP and get it done? Like, why do we make this a big deal? It's really, do we have the money for it? Do we agree as council to move ahead? Yes or no? Throw money at it, done. The fish float.
Yeah, of course we have the money for it.
Yeah, so.
We have some money in our recreation funding. We've got excess surplus. I think definitely we just throw it in the budget.
And just,
I don't think
Yeah.
it could come under a bit of COVID money, to be honest, because you're providing more space and
Outdoor recreation.
outdoor recreation.